Hey folks, it's Phoebe with Shrubsteppe Blooms. It snowed last night. It's the first day of 2025. It's melting off very rapidly, but I figured I'd come out and take a look at things today because I haven't been out in the field for probably a week or more because I've just been cozied up inside with my spreadsheets. But there's a few things that I have been poking around and been delighting to see. One of them is this is a patch of sedum that's planted far too densely, so eventually I have to deal with that. But this back here is an autumn joy sedum, and look at all those little nubbins for this year. So those are all kind of sitting there waiting and dormant until they get the cue this spring, and they're gonna take right off. I think these are lemon jade. Oh, here's the tag. Yeah, lemon jade. So we've got a couple of different varieties out here. They're largely the autumn joy, like super common one, and then just a smattering of a few different varieties, and then some called Emperor's Wave that I started from seed, and those are down here. And I was poking around at a little tiny one that barely grew much of anything last year. So it grew one big stalk and then a few little stalks. These were started from seed in 2024, and it's already got, let's see if we can count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 or 9 little nubbins. There's a real word for that, not just nubbins, but I don't know what it is right now. And if we go over here under the weeds, there's even more. Plants are so wild to me, so this is probably a weed of some kind that's gonna try to take over creation in the spring because it's all over the place. But these germinated in the fall, and then they're just sitting here over winter, and they're gonna bust up in the spring, and I'm gonna have a lot of weeding to do, but that's not really the point I'm trying to make. But this is a sedum started from seed in like March of 2024, and look how far it's already gone. So if that's an experiment you want to do, I highly recommend it. I was just eyeballing some mixed sedum seeds online this morning, so I might be experimenting more with this. This Emperor's Wave, or whatever this one is called, is got that purple leaf structure rather than the standard green and then kind of pinky purple flowers. So it was a nice different color from some of those like lemony and green varieties that I already had. But yeah, I'm really super thrilled to come out and be seeing this. And then right next door is my patch of lavender. I was just counting how many plants I could transplant out because they're far too tightly spaced. These were all started from cuttings, so I had no idea. Like, it was the first time I'd ever really had success with it. I had no idea if they were going to survive. They did really well, and they're way too densely planted. So in here, this is pretty starkly a different variety. So there's Provence and Phenomenal in here, I think. And one variety was a little bit slower, didn't bloom last year really, and one variety was faster. But you can really tell that these are only not even a year old, and they're already kind of bunching up against each other. So I was thinking I could take out that whole middle row and transplant them somewhere else. We also have a pine tree in this row because the pine tree was here before there was a garden bed. So it's looking mighty fine. I always really enjoy seeing these little candles coming for next year. We'll see how much they bust off next year. We had some that grew, I want to say like 1.5 feet this year, which to me for a conifer is really fast, but especially in our climate, but they are getting extra water. But yeah, it'll be nice one day to have some shade out here for sure. But yeah, nice ponderosa pine. There's kind of a row of native stuff. You can kind of see these little pods out here. That's down below the garden on that side, and I'm hopefully going to get a row down below this section in this year. There's some big invasive elm chunks that I need to dig out this year though, so it's kind of been slowing me down. I also ordered willow stakes, which I'm really excited about. So I ordered, I think, 4 different varieties of willow stakes from Willamette Willow, which is, like, in the grand scheme of things, fairly close to us here in central Washington. And so I bought a couple different kinds that are specifically for ornamental work. So like the ones with the really big, fluffy or colorful catkins. And then because I want to do all the things, I also bought a couple that are used for basketry, because I have this objective of one day making myself a basket, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. So those are gonna go in a row down here, hence really needing to get those darn elms out, because that was a tree that got cut down, and then we've been cutting on it, and they just keep coming back. And the fastest thing would have been to cut stump treat it, so cutting it down and then painting it with glyphosate or some other systemic herbicide, but we just haven't gotten there. So I've been trying to dig out as much as I can. That one is too big. I will not probably be able to do that by hand, but we'll see. We might be able to attach something to the tractor and rip it out, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the lavender is looking really good, and we're gonna zoom along and check on this other section. This patch of lavender up here kind of got smushed by the hollyhocks, which I knew was gonna happen, but even so, you can see they're all kind of going like this direction if you look at them, but they're gonna be fine. So I think this is Grosso down here, which is gets really large. They are probably too close together also, because they do get a couple feet across, and they even started making it to try to bloom this year, or last year I guess now, which is great. And I need to come through and pull all this down, just whack it all back. And then down here we have a variety called Blue Spear, and you can see marked difference here between the varieties. So really different leaf color here on the Grosso, and then the Blue Spear is just way smaller in stature. And I don't know that this is really going to be one for cutting. I don't think it gets as big, but it would be nice for doing little wands or drying it for the, just the scent. And there's maybe a dozen or so plants in this section here. So my goal was to have like a big wall of lavender kind of down towards the bottom, because we both really love lavender, and it seemed like a great idea. And they're really hardy, they're pretty drought tolerant. They come back year to year in our area. There are varieties that won't come back, like some of the Spanish lavenders typically don't come back in our area. That being said, it's been very warm this fall again. In winter, I don't know that we've really gotten down into the teens yet. So I have 2 Spanish lavender plants up near the house that I'm seeing if they will survive. But I do need to maybe steal one of the plants of the Grosso in here, because one of my kind of border plants in the roses died. I don't really know why. I think it honestly might have been getting too much water. They don't really love a lot of water. It makes them floppy and weird and unhappy. But I need to repurpose one of these plants, probably. Maybe back in here somewhere I can take one of these and put it up in the roses. The other thing you can kind of still see coming along in here is there's Baptisia from last year. So these are all seedlings started last year. It's going to probably take several years. I would guess at least 2 to 3 more years of growth before I can really cut on them. And then we've got pale purple coneflower in here, and they have kind of narrower, different looking leaves than the like really standard, easily attainable pale coneflower, or purple coneflower rather. And they are far too dense in here also. So there's a section down there where there were just sunflowers this year. I might need to kind of move some of these out so they don't choke out the Baptisia I'm trying to grow in here. But you can see pretty nice sized little plants from last year. There's 3 colors in here, which I think I've mentioned before. There's the indigo, or the really common blue down there. There's a yellow variety, which I think is these here. And then there's a cream variety, which very few germinated, so I bought a whole bunch more seed to try over this winter. And I will probably winter sow them out in my tunnel kind of thing, so they're not going to start inside the house, because they need a kind of cold stratification situation. Not as long as some other seeds, but they do need some. So here's the sea oats, and they're still looking pretty cute. They got pretty knocked over by the rain and snow and wind and whatnot. But they performed way better than I thought they would in their first year. I didn't really know if they would make seeds in their first year, or if they would just work on getting roots established. But I've been really happy with them. I don't know if I'll expand my section. I might plant a few more down there because there were some annuals in there this year, so I can keep on working on making this bed solely perennial plants. And then under here, what I'm hoping will come back, I don't know how to say this name very right, so bear with me, Astrantia, something like that, I think I have Star of Billions, Star of something. They're very cute. I don't know that they're really particularly well suited for our climate. Last winter I read this book about all the different kinds of perennials you could grow for your cut flower garden. And the author is based in England, which is just a very different climate than we have here. So I tried to get them established with a little bit of shade this year, and I really hope they come back next year because they are very cool flowers. Oh, there's one that's just hanging out. They're really neat flowers. There's some phlox down here, which still hasn't died all the way back. So this is a perennial phlox. I have a white variety, a bluish variety, and then like a blush color in here. So there's kind of some scattered in there. One of the experiments we're running is seeing if the Alstroemeria come back. I did not buy new seeds this year because if I have to start them from seed every year, I'm just not going to do it because they bloom so late in our climate. I think next year, if they do come back, I need to protect them and, you know, try to save as many from the frost as possible. But they theoretically are hardy in our zone. I left all the plants on top, like I didn't shear them down or anything, to hopefully let them mulch themselves a little bit and protect the soil. And we'll see what happens. This GM 100% does not care that it is winter. Look at how green that is. It's so lush. It's so beautiful. It's so ready for spring. It's been so warm. We had a day that was like in the low 50s in late December, which is just, I know the world is changing, but I'm not ready for it to be quite like that. Look how green that is. These are definitely a cool season plant, I think, for the GMs, but these are just mostly a red variety called Lady Bradshaw, maybe, or Strathenden or something like that. And there were a few flowers on it this year, so you can kind of see the remaining seed heads here. Oh, there's a nice one. You can see there. So if I really wanted to collect seed off it, I could, but I still have seed packets from when I started these. These were also started from seed in the spring of 2024, so they're less than a year old. And I'm just hoping I'm hoping they'll bloom early when I don't have a lot of other flowers going, and kind of bridge that gap. So there is a long-term goal of having most of these beds in perennials, and over there there'll be willows added. This section, the 12th bed, will be raspberries eventually, so that I can use that for foliage, because I found that to work really well pretty much all season. So there'll be 4 or 5 beds here that are all perennials eventually, because why not, honestly. The other thing that's looking really nice is the eucalyptus. Like from a distance it looks fine. Once you get up too close, you know, it's obviously a little pocked and sad and tired and weather beaten, but all things considered, being that we're halfway through winter basically, I think it looks pretty good, and we'll see how it does next year. This section is where I planted Rudbeckia this summer to overwinter and see how it did. This section is also completely overridden with this salvia. So this is where I had that kind of flag structure salvia in 3 different colors this spring. And it was a cool plant. It was fine. I let it go to seed. I assumed once we started dipping into the 20s, all those new seedlings would die. They have not. Ava is unfortunately making some thinning choices that I do not agree with, and I think she might have just destroyed the drip tape that's over there. But this is part of having a dog, right? The other interesting thing is that this honeywort is coming up all over the place. Like, I didn't plant this anywhere near here in the last 2 years, but it's here. I'm sure it's because we tilled the area and the seeds got moved around. Ava, please stop. Come on, out. Hi. Look at her though, she's so focused. She's so determined. She's so good at her job. If only her job was this, but it's not. Look at her face. Yeah, you. She's also been digging over there. I heard her rattling the plastic, which is a telltale sign that she's being naughty. But again, that's part of having a young dog, I think. Anyway, so there's a lot more stuff alive out here still than I would have anticipated. I know Scabiosa is pretty cold hardy, and that's what this is here, the pincushion flower. Yeah, see, just right next to the next spot. I don't think I've ever had it over winter, and I assume we'll get a cold snap that will actually knock it completely back, but right now it's got flower buds on it. Like, go figure. It just hasn't been cold, and this kind of happened last year too, where we had a really mild time through December, and then we got a real cold snap in like January, February, so it could well still be coming. But we'll see how it all turns out. The other thing I wasn't expecting from last year, or that I learned last year, I guess, is this salvia here. I think it's either Blue Better or Blue Victoria or something like that, and it survives our winters a little bit, so it'll die all the way back down, and then the roots will resprout, or like down here, you know, somewhere on these nodes will resprout. So that was interesting, and if it does survive, I might have to transplant it to a different spot, but that's okay. This other species of salvia, absolutely dead. So this is the one where I was showing you that like ice frost flower thing that was just like ballooning out of the stems. It got warm the next day and it all melted, so I'm glad I caught it when I did. But so that one's totally toast. This is that red salvia, and then this is a blue one that I've been finally starting to figure out how to use in bouquets properly. So just in terms of making sure it doesn't wilt immediately. But yeah, that's some of what's going on in here. There's definitely still Dusty Miller up there. There's definitely still snapdragons alive down there. We can go and take a quick look at those too. There's also stock that's alive, so I think I've mentioned multiple times at this point, being really curious to see if this will survive. This was planted in like April of 2024, so it's almost a year old now. I'm curious if it's still gonna even try to bloom. But the snapdragons, like, pretty much unfazed, dormant, but don't care. Like, they're not dead yet. See? Okay. Anyway, I guess she's pointing out to me where I need to put gopher traps, maybe. But I'm gonna see if this reblooms. I think I'll come through and just, we have a hedge trimmer, I think, and I can just whoosh all the way across the top and see if they'll rebloom in the spring. Otherwise, this is where my winter squash is going next year, I think. But yeah, we'll see. And then down here are ranunculus that I never dug up. They're still growing. These are like the really cheap ones you can get at Lowe's, because I was trying to learn on a cheap variety instead of buying fancy ones that I wasn't sure I'd keep alive. But there's quite a few plants in here, so I'll be very curious to know if we get flowers next year, or this spring, I guess, because that would be pretty cool. But otherwise, there's still calendula trying to bloom. Some stuff is very, very dead. Like anything cold sensitive is absolute toast. There's a whole section of these bachelor buttons and poppies that I think I showed fairly recently that volunteered and regrew from, you know, seeds being dropped here. So we'll see if I get an early crop of that. And then there's still, the lisianthus is still green. I don't think that means it's going to live though. But that would be pretty amusing if the carpet of clover made it be able to live. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's been interestingly warm and pretty good amount of precipitation. And hopefully that bodes well for us. We're almost out of a drought type on our drought monitor map. Everywhere I look, I see new spots that she's been tunneling. Look, you can hear her on the other side, like a little Ava, ma'am. Anyway, I think it's time for us to go because she's just getting too excited about this digging everything up situation. But that's about it. Hope everybody had a wonderful New Year celebration and good holidays and all that stuff, and have a wonderful rest of your day.